Hi guys, it's Liz Wilkinson here from West Town, West Point Town, where I've taken over. I just thought that I would have a chat with you guys about pedophilia and what it actually is. I was seriously uneducated myself until recently, when my own family called me a pedophile via a family member, and it led me to have a look online and have a read of the information that was available. And I thought that there was just one kind of, I think I've said this before, I feel like I'm repeating myself, one kind of pedophile, and that's not true. Pedophilia is complicated. It's not a straightforward attraction to children as the media and general public, I suppose, tend to believe. I'm not even sure if the cops understand it, to be honest with you. I had a conversation with a policewoman earlier this year, and she she said some strange things to me about pedophilia. After what I read on the internet, it made me question if she even understood what it was that she told me, because she said to me that if a pedophile was arrested, they're usually very embarrassed about the fact that they've been caught, and and I mean, I thought the word embarrassed was an interesting word to use, because I would have thought that it would have been more like guilt. And I also found it fascinating that they allowed it to happen repeatedly. I think that was the thing that shocked me the most, especially after reading the information that I did on the internet, was that true pedophiles who are born with a sexual attraction to children, they can't help that. It's like I've heard it described as a form of sexuality, and that won't go away. It doesn't matter how old they are. They don't graduate out of pedophilia after, in puberty or anything like that. I'm aware that they'd probably become aware of their own attraction to children at when puberty set in. And who do you tell? So who do you tell about that kind of stuff? It's not the kind of thing you can sit down with your mum and dad and say, I'm coming out as a pedophile, like you can now when you're gay, like when you're gay, or when you have an alternative sexuality. And so there's pedophiles who are born with a neurological difference in their brain, and it makes them see children as potential partners. There's also pedophiles who, having been abused by a pedophile, will have stunted sexual development until they deal with the trauma. There's also a variety of subclasses that run off that, in terms of age, preferred age of child, look. I think there's like general ages 5 to 8, teenagers maybe 10 to 12. Like if you look online, there's an amazing amount of information online. There's also ones that I experienced, known as, well, apart from outside of my family, snatch and grab pedophiles, and they're people who can't help themselves. They become so just have to bust out that they will just grab a kid off the street. And I was nearly the victim of that. I probably was the victim of that multiple times when I think about it, as a teenage girl, but I didn't see it that way. I saw it as I had somewhere to stay for the night because I was running away from my home because I was so unhappy, and I was living in a family home where a priest was abusing children. That priest was called Father Eidoff, and he's associated with Viard College, and nothing has still been done about that. And the boys in that I was living in the home with, most of them had already been sexually abused. It's like if you get one touch, that's it. So you're touched for life, unfortunately. That seemed to be, like I could see that after reading the information I came across online, and it made me see sexual abuse and pedophilia very differently. And there's this weird thing these days, about what sexual abuse is, and it seems to be about the act. The act of a certain sexual act is what makes somebody be sexually abused. Well, what constitutes sexual abuse, and what constitutes sexual abuse is actually lack of consent. So lack of verbal consent, lack of physical consent. I mean, there's consent on so many levels that the developing world doesn't seem to understand, because again they're so focused on the act. I mean, I've been joking about double penetration on Facebook, and I'm half joking because I understand that for a person who's been sexually abused, as I was, what that does is it seems to interfere with something up here in your mind. I don't know exactly, maybe in time with research, we'll better find out what that is. And so there's a part of your brain that it affects, and it makes you think that sex is the be-all and end-all to life. I think, before I killed the sex industry, they called it, I think I've typed this on Facebook, they called it having sexualized feelings. And so you have sexual feelings all the time. And I mean, now I say that out loud now, and I just think that's so just fucking stupid, because feelings come from what you see, and the trigger is what's in front of you, is what's in front of you. It's not an internal, not an internal thing. A trigger is usually an outside thing. And so what it's triggering, what is triggering is something that has never been, there's never, been found a solution for that. And I became very aware of it when I tried to go back to New Zealand a few months ago. Well, I went back to New Zealand a few months ago and ended up being arrested for breaching the protection order my mother had falsified against me through the court system. That she'd abused the court. I mean, she's abused the court system in Porora. That's for the second time, and colleagues at her, at Porora Court had supported her in that. Nobody, my mum lives this like secret life behind closed doors. Except it's not just behind closed doors; it's behind her face. That's probably the best way to. The best way to describe it, because her life on the outside has been about suffering for my father, and I don't believe that's true now. I think she's suffered for herself. That's the life that she's chosen. I started to believe that probably about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, when it occurred to me that she had a choice. And I think maybe I was in my 20s when it occurred to me that my father had a choice as well. So, and I don't mean in his attraction to children or anything like that. I meant in his behaviour, so that he could have actually chosen at some stage to do something different, and that if he hadn't done that, which he hadn't, there was probably something wrong, and I kind of reached that conclusion with my mother when I went back to New Zealand recently. So while I was back in New Zealand, I was trying to get some support just in terms of what was going on with my ongoing family problem with my nephew being sexually abused while being in a program for being sexually abused, and only my family can pull that off, and and during that time I caught up with a guy from I think it's called the sexual, something to do with men and sexual abuse recovery or something like that, and spent a bit of time with a guy called, I think his name was Richard, and I know one of the therapists. His name's Mike Cagney. Hi, Mike. I've been chasing him on email. He just ignores me. I think Mike's suffering from a bit of lack of development in terms of compassion for other people, because he believes that the way to treat sex offenders is to be horrible to them. I'm not really sure why he thinks it is. It seems to be his approach to everything, because when I first met him when I was a teenage girl. I was 13, and went into SIFs, ended up in SIFs in Pororoa with my sister, and he was a social worker then, and he was horrible to us as well. So his attitude towards other human beings hasn't changed. Sorry, Mike. And I don't really know what that's about. I'm not sure if it's like a control thing, or if you actually think that it's possible to be in charge of another person or be in charge of a relationship, and when relationships actually develop a day at a time. But anyway, so I spent a bit of time with Richard from, I think it's a male sexual abuse network, I think it's what it's called, and it was interesting talking to him because he was very obsessed with acts as well, like what was the act, or what was the... He told me this funny story about it's an unusual story, and I've heard these stories a lot, and I'm not a man, so, but it just struck me as just strange, and about how a woman who was in power over him, she was like a trainer on a course or something like that, was sleeping with the younger boys and the kids. Well, they weren't really kids. Like, I think maybe she was 40 and they were like maybe late teens, early 20s, and if she was sexually attracted to any of them, she would say, "Come to my room," and blah blah blah. And so and I mean, the story that he told me is that it happened to a lot of the guys on the course, and he didn't get invited back, and to do it again with her, and that was sexual abuse. and I've heard a lot of stories of like that from men, and I find them weird, because this is why I find them weird. I'm not saying that they weren't sexually abused, but this is why I find them weird. My next thought is always, if she invited you back again and again and again and again because she enjoyed it, would that still be sexual abuse? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, it just doesn't make... I mean, I'm not trying to be derogatory, but there's a part of my brain that just can't compute that, because it just seems so weird to me. It's kind of like an ego. Like, I kind of see it like an ego thing. I mean, it's different if a woman in her 40s is abusing a 6-year-old, or like lack of consent, blah blah blah, age, but the age of legal consent, as far as I'm aware, in New Zealand and Australia is 16, and so at that age, a person is meant to have developed enough as a human being to be able to give consent. Unfortunately, pedophilia hasn't really kind of lived up to that. I can't... I mean, I've had so much sex, it's unbelievable, and I'd had so much sex by the time I'd had so much abuse and sex by the time I was 16. I was wrecked. So I was wrecked because I had no feelings, and my feelings were just dead. They were non-existent, and my experience also was as a teenager having mad amounts of sex, was I didn't even talk to them. It never even occurred to me that maybe I should. And when I say them, I mean like these teenage boys that I was sleeping with, and because in my mind that's just what you did, like that's just what I knew, like that, I suppose that's what I've been taught, and yeah, so it was interesting catching up with this guy from the Male Sexual Abuse Network and his views on sex and sexuality, and he asked me if I would be interested in going to talk to his organisation, his support group of men, about sex and about because of because I was working as dominatrix, because I know a lot about sexuality and stuff and sexual stuff. It's just sexual stuff, and he wanted to know if I would be interested in going and talking to his group about sexual stuff, and I said that I would, but I said to him I was more interested in talking to them about the obsession with sex that comes about from being sexually abused, and usually and it's the same for men and women. So usually men, in my experience, have the sex part of it more, but it just really depends. I mean, it's such a weird, such an unusual thing. I mean, it's such an unusual medical condition. That's the only way I can think to describe it, because it affects people so perversely that the only way you can tell if someone has it is if they tell you. However, there is certain signs somebody has been sexually abused, and it's usually around boundaries, especially around professional boundaries, and people's view of other people. And a good sign is if a person continually tells you that they're vulnerable, or that they're in trouble, or that they're constantly needing help, they're probably being sexually abused. So it's like some kind of barrier in them has just been smashed as a human being, and has been unable to be rebuilt. Neediness, I think, is the term. Just neediness, always needing something. There's no kind of balance in their life, and they kind of have this. It's weird, because I can kind of sense it. Right? They have this kind of gaping hole, I suppose, in their personal boundaries, and they're pretty good at pushing holes in your personal boundaries if you let them. And see, I've had a lot of experience pushing holes in personal boundaries as a mistress professionally, but in my personal life, I had gaping ones that I couldn't even see, and someone else did, and a guy called Richard Barton, and he gave. Well, I mean, the situation with him is that I thought I was going to end up with HIV, because he had HIV, and I was having unprotected sex with him, and just smashed me in terms of how low my level of personal safety is, and still can be at times, which is not deliberate. I just don't have it. So it's not true. I do have it. I have an unusual form of it. That's probably the best way to. To put it. I have this theory, which is lock your gate, which basically means being aware of the potential for somebody to harm me, but at the same time showing compassion. And I've kind of got a bit of a one-stroke rule at the moment. That may change in time. But I developed that after thinking that I was possibly going to have HIV. So I mean, it took an ass kicking from me. It's a shame that there's never been that it's taken such a long time for. I mean, it's great for me, but it's just a shame. Like, I think about all the therapists who must have seen so many clients struggling with the same problem, and nobody thought to maybe try something else, because that's all I did. I was like, well, if this really is how things are and they can't be changed, the next option is you just create another option. And so I came up with the idea of dwarfs for pedophiles, or midgets, little people, something, you know, along those lines, because my understanding is that it's the look that pedophiles are attracted to. It's not the, what's the word? I assume it's, to a certain extent, it's probably the fun nature of children. Other people would say it's the vulnerability, but I don't think that's true, because pedophiles aren't psychopaths. So I know there's a lot of stuff on the internet about people who, you know, rape and murder children and that kind of stuff, but that's not someone who's a pedophile. That's someone who's probably a pedophile and a serial killer. And there's a woman who wrote a book about serial killers, and I think I've said this before too, and the science behind that, she believes, is the fusing of the what you call it, the human brain and the amphibian brain, or something like that. Animals have those kind of brains that they just so they don't sort of have the, well, not even animals, it's like the survival brain, you know, and there's some kind of, she believes that there's some kind of fusion. And Ted Bundy is probably a very good example of that, and he's been all over Netflix, and if you watch that you can see that there's a part of him that he accepts that here's how he is, but there's also a part of him that fights it. And I imagine that's what it's like, being born with a physical attraction to children or animals. You know, every day of your life you wake up and you have to think about, will someone notice? What if they notice? What about that last kid I told them to be quiet? You know, what about my friend who's also into kids? And pedophiles don't just go online and start clubs. They just naturally gravitate towards each other. It's like it's the same as if you're into cricket. You meet people that are into cricket. It's just a personality trait, and so like attracts like. So if you play cricket and you're a pedophile, chances are you're probably going to meet another pedophile that plays cricket. Chances are you're probably going to, you know, do something with children that's dodge, and at the moment, and chances are you're going to get caught, and chances are you're going to go to jail, you're going to get bashed, you're going to come out, and then you're going to do it again because you can't help yourself. And that's what it's like. It's my understanding of what pedophilia is like. It's like this constant battle for a normal life. So a normal life that you and I, who don't have pedophilia or zoophilia, have, you know. I mean, my life has been interesting. It's been an experience, but you know. But now I definitely wouldn't trade. Actually, there was never any times in my life that I, well, except when I was a teenager, that I probably would have traded it, because, you know, I spent a long time in Alcoholics Anonymous, where they hammered into us that it's what you give, that's, you know, that when you're feeling bad you give out, instead of having that victim-y attitude. And it's taken me a lot of practice. A lot of practice. It'll take me a lot more practice to you know, to do that daily, because when I'm living that way, life's good. You know, when I'm living that way, life's good. And I'm pretty excited actually about how this is all going to look in the future, because it's just like such a unlocking of such a taboo subject for such a really, really long time, because people just hide it, you know, which can't be very good for your self-esteem, can it really? Like if you're someone's, say if you're someone, well, it's like my brother, so my brother John, like he's hidden it, and he knows that I know. I sent him an email, and he probably thought that it'd go away, but I got your number, John, and I think about the life that he's lived, and he's never married. He had one girlfriend who broke his heart, and that was it. And unfortunately, spent a lot of time with my nephews, and he, you know, like he fit all the classic criteria. Even a cousin of mine asked me earlier this year, and I said to my cousin, well, strangely enough, you know, I'm positive I said strangely enough, or we talked, well, if I didn't say it out loud, I definitely thought it. I didn't think that he would be very accepting of that fact, you know, like men just hate men who are attracted to children. It's like an instinctual drive for protection, which is pretty natural, but it's not natural if you don't understand that that's the way they're born. So there are people who just one day wake up and decide, I'm going to go out and abuse a kid today just for the kicks, and those people are the ones in my mind who should be charged, because they're choosing it. It's a choice, and a choice is usually a one-off event. It's not a repetitive pattern, you know. Pedophilia is a repetitive pattern that you know, goes throughout a person's life. Absolutely goes throughout a person's life. I'm not sure what the solution is to pedophiles like my father, who I have no memory of him sexually abusing me, like physically, but I did have that perverse emotional relationship with him, where I'm more like his girlfriend than I ever was his daughter. He didn't care for me in a way that a father would care for a child, and I look back now and I wonder if that maybe made my siblings jealous, and I was going to say, it sounds funny to say, but that wasn't deliberate. It wasn't a choice, it wasn't a choice for me as a child, and I'm not sure what the solution is to those kind of boundary violations in kids, but I can see them in adults. God, can I see them in adults when they're by the way that they treat their children, their perception of their children, their need of their children is, you know, kind of the big one. And when I say that, it's constant. You know, it's constant over a long, long period of time. It's not a one-off event. It's not the occasional daughter helping out mum. It's basically a lifestyle. And D.H. White, my first citizen, I had to cut him off because financially, because he's been supporting his mum. So I've been giving him money and he's been giving it to her. And that wasn't the deal that I had with him, you know. And I was going to message her and ask her what her problem was, because he was put in tag in Australia at 14 because he was being financially abused by his mother. And it's funny that so 86, so he was born in 86, now it's 2020, they're still happening, and no one's noticed that that's happening, because he's allowing it and taught him to say no. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, no one's actually taught him that it's alright to say, no mum, you know, my own financial security is more important than yours. If I don't look after myself first, then I can't look after anyone. Like, no one's actually said to him that that's okay to do that. And then that sounds like a weird thing to have to say to a grown up, to an adult male, but I'm pretty sure if you, in theory of possibility, let's just go like this, theory of possibility, if you approached every person who had ever been in the system, jail, family home, any kind of institution, you'd find that the majority of them have very incestuous relationships with their parents, and that their parents are very dependent on them for their needs. You know, they have children, and then they expect those children to look after them, and which is pedophilia. You know, whether or not there's sexual abuse or direct sexual abuse. This pedophilia, it's like a reversal of power in the relationship, where all the power is given to the child, and the child isn't equipped to deal with it. That's not why people have children, you know. But if you go to, as I said, if you go to the system, that's the majority of the relationships are like that. So I think, you know, therapeutically what they call them is dependent relationships or codependent, but it's not that. I don't think it's that. That's what led me to kill the sex industry. I think it's something else. I think it's like a neurological perceptional issue, maybe caused by the fact that pedophilia has never been something that's openly discussed, you know. So personality raping your kids or emotionally raping your kids is pedophilia. Absolutely, without a doubt. And I invented those terms. I think what they used to be called were things like blackmailing, emotional blackmail, and which kind of makes it sound like you signed up for it. It's like, can I have some emotional blackmail? But it's not. It's raping. It's emotional raping, and it's having parents who, I suppose, I think the term is put the guilt trip on you, but it's not even. They can't put anything on you. They just rape you emotionally, rape you financially. You know, like just treat you like you're their equal, even though you came second. You know, even though you came second, and it's physically impossible for that to even be a possibility. But it has for a long time, because no one's noticed. Like, I seem to have been the first person that has noticed how strange it is trying to have a conversation with somebody, and it's very, very obvious that both of you are in two very different places, and trying to have a conversation, but it's not even with very different views. It's like very different forms of development as people, you know, and I had one of those. I had one of those today when I was trying to ring Scott Morrison to make an appointment to go see him, and can't even remember her name. She's the admin girl anyway. She just kept insisting I send an email. She just kept insisting that I sent an email. It didn't matter what I said to her, and I kept saying to her, "You're not listening to what I'm saying to you." She just kept insisting that I send an email. It's just the most bizarre thing, and they do it a lot here in Australia. It's like you ring them up, alright? This is like government departments. New Zealand's like this as well. You ring them up, and what you get is blasting from a megaphone about what you need to do, except you're actually ringing up for help. It's the weirdest thing, but you don't even get a chance to ask, because they just blast you, and it's like reverse. I don't even know what it is. It's just the strangest thing, and I think I suppose the lack of acknowledgement around pedophilia and how it can affect people. It probably all contributes to that kind of behaviour to a certain extent, you know, because it's emotional. That kind of stuff's emotional. Not being able to respond to another person, but just force your will on them is an unusual thing, and it's a repeated. To actually behave that way, you have to have experienced it. So people who haven't had that happen to them, they don't behave like that. They respond to a situation. They don't create a situation. And professionally, as a job, as a mistress, I've created situations. That was what I was paid to do. you know. I just shared all stuff on Facebook about having a nursery and being afraid of having children and all this kind of stuff. And I don't even know if that's true or not. I'm not even sure if it's relevant. That can be the unusual thing about renting things on Facebook is they don't always come across how they're meant to. But I know that when I started doing sessions as Mummy Morgan, I really noticed the lack of mothering in the clients that I had, and can't say that I kind of made up for that. I'd like to tell you that I did, but I'm more like a nanny. So I worked as a nanny for a long time, and I've always kind of liked the fun nature of children, and and there's just kind of some things that I just couldn't kind of do, but I know other women that do them and who were doing them, and because I don't have that mothering instinct for men like that. I'd probably say my life really. I was at times I had it marginally for my own daughter, but it's definitely got better over the years. But I don't have it for for men. And the interesting thing about the BDSM world is that I was unusual there in the fact that I chose to play as a mistress, as a dominant, because most women will play as a submissive or a sub, and usually the ones who do play as a mistress or a dominant woman, they usually will do it because that's what their partners want, not because, initially it's because that's what their partners want, and some of them get really into it, others don't. But the activities that people get up to their sexual, natural sexual exploration of human sexuality, as adults. So just in case you wonder what it is we actually get up to, not everybody has the full-on nature of it, where I created this persona of Vicious Morgan and then found out that I wasn't. That was pretty much it, Well, there probably is a part of me that is, there probably is a part of me that is, but the fantasy of it is a lot of fun. Is a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun, and not everybody has to indulge in that 24/7 or live that way. There is a proportion of people who can, who do, but a lot of people can. A lot of people who, it's just another thing that they do in their lives. It's not, like going to the pub, or it's just part of their life. It's not it's just another part. It's not, they're not watching double penetration on Neighbours, I know that there's probably people out there who believe that they are, but not everybody is, it's the same, I suppose it's the same as saying that everybody who drinks excessively is an alcoholic, and that's not true either. So some people just drink excessively. That's just how life is, Some people choose to do other stuff excessively, or under excessively, and then eventually, we hit the balance somewhere along the line. Or people will spend a period of time playing in the BDSM world, act it out, and move on. So act it out and move on. So there's a place for, everybody. It's just, for pedophiles and zoophilia, it's been creating one, or finding a solution to a problem that no one really saw as a problem. Not sure how other people saw it. They just saw it as maybe a lifestyle choice or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, other people are strange. You know, I'm strange, but I find other people stranger. It's just like, did you just say that to me? Did I just hear that right? But just because it stuns me sometimes, you know how I think it stuns me, people's lack of thought for other people. Today I went to the supermarket tonight. I was chatting to the young guy behind the counter and asking him what it was like to work in the supermarket, because I've never worked at a supermarket. I've never worked for myself. And lack of going to school did that for me. At 8 I probably had ADHD and it wasn't medicated properly. I've lived through medical experiences as a child that I definitely should have had medical treatment for, and nobody got me that treatment. And I don't say that in a feel sorry for me kind of way, I say that in a factual kind of way. And so at 8 I probably should have been medicated for ADHD, and my learning kind of stopped, parts of my learning kind of stopped. But so my ability to work with other people, sometimes in a people factory, I suppose you could call it, it's sort of called the supermarkets, in a people factory, I couldn't cope. But I was asking him, he told me that they're not allowed to pack bags anymore as part of coronavirus. So the process at the supermarket is now you take your stuff up to the counter, they put it through the counter, they go ding ding, and then they pass it to you and you put it in the bag, but they're not allowed to directly bag it themselves. And and I said to him, I thought he was taking the piss actually. I said to him, are you serious? And he said, yeah. And I was like, okay. And then I said to him, do you ever just like wonder, like when you're in the staff room and you hear all these directives and that, do you ever just like in your mind think, what the fuck? And he was very hesitant to confirm or deny because he works there. And, you know, and I was saying to him things, like, if I worked at a supermarket, I'd start doing things, you know, just out of resentment, to just fuck with people, and so tomorrow he'll probably start doing that, and wreck Coles, which they deserve for being retards. The taxi driver that dropped me off, I got a taxi back from West Point, and after going to the supermarket, and I got the cold air experience, which was him, like, I was in the car and he drove around with the windows down, and that was for the coronavirus, you know, it's for him and the coronavirus, and me, you know, we don't want to get coronavirus, and so obviously the cold air is going to blow it out, and I said to him, you do know that that's been caused by, that's an immunology problem, it's actually inside us, that's what's caused it. And I don't think he listened to me. No one ever listens to me. I mean, I'm the voice of logic. So, you know, there's no pinky in the brain creating coronavirus, guys. We've done it to ourselves through our obsession with cleanliness. Just wanted to be clean. You can thank the Catholic Church for that one. I tell you, good old Pope John Paul. So, bastardising human sexuality to such a point that even if you think it, you know, even if you think it, you're dirty, but don't worry about it if you're seeing it on, don't worry about it if you're seeing double penetration on Neighbours. Just tell people you're not thinking about it, and then it's all alright. You know, they can't tell, they can't see it, but you can see it, you know, it's still in you, and doesn't go away, unfortunately. We all have, you know, we're all sexual beings. Yeah. But anyway, so that's my chat for tonight. I think I might start doing these rather than just ranting things out on Facebook. It'll probably make my life a lot easier. Yeah. Okay. See you. Bye.